Arracourt matters because it was more than a battlefield where tanks were destroyed in large numbers. It was the place where an ambitious armored thrust built around speed, shock, and modern machines ran into a defense that had learned just enough, just in time, to make the ground fight back. Fought in the Kem-Karan sector from 8 to 10 September 1965, the battle became one of the defining armored actions of the India-Pakistan War of 1965. Its fame rests partly on the wrecked and captured Pattons left in the fields, but its deeper importance lies in the lesson those wrecks taught. Tanks can open possibilities, but only combined arms, terrain, timing, and command judgment decide whether those possibilities become victory.
If you would like to move beyond the podcast, you can see my available books at militaryauthor.me. And at trackpads.com, you will find magazines and galleries with hundreds of thousands of photos and videos to explore.
The battle's first importance is operational. Pakistan's plan was not simply to win a local fight around Kem-Karan. The thrust aimed beyond the border town, toward Begiwind, Arracourt, and the Bias crossings, where a breakthrough could have threatened Indian communications and forced a much wider crisis in Punjab. That is why Arracourt cannot be understood as a static defensive episode or as a dramatic tank duel. The Pakistani offensive sought depth, tempo, and dislocation. It was trying to make a local breach produce consequences far behind the immediate front. India's achievement was to prevent that chain from forming. Kem-Karan could be lost, but the road beyond Kem-Karan could not be allowed to open.
The second importance is doctrinal. Arracourt showed the difference between owning strong armored forces and using them under conditions that allow armored warfare to work. Pakistan possessed impressive tanks, especially the American-built Pattons that carried a powerful reputation in the region. These machines gave confidence to a plan that sought rapid exploitation, but machines do not fight in ideal conditions unless commanders create those conditions. Tanks need reconnaissance to find routes, infantry to clear close ground, engineers to deal with mines and crossings, artillery to suppress defenders, and logistics to keep fuel, ammunition, and recovery moving behind the spearhead. At Arracourt, too many of those needs were frustrated. The result was not merely tank loss, but the loss of operational rhythm. India's response matters because it was improvised under pressure rather than designed in comfort. The Indian 4 Mountain Division was not the perfect formation for stopping a major armored thrust in the plains of Punjab. Its very presence in this role reveals the mismatch and danger facing the Indian defense. Yet the division and its supporting arms adapted quickly enough to turn a withdrawal into a defensive method. Pulling back from exposed ground near Kem-Karan was not surrender to the enemy's plan. It was the beginning of a new plan, one that used Arracourt, Chima, nearby villages, fields, mines, water, artillery, and armor to break the momentum of the Pakistani advance. The terrain was not a backdrop. It was an active participant in the battle. The Kem-Karan sector could look from a distance like tank country, flatter and more open than the hills and valleys of Kashmir. But at fighting level, it was shaped by sugarcane, irrigation channels, village edges, soft ground, tracks, embankments, and waterlogged fields. Indian engineers and local commanders made those features more dangerous by laying mines and using water to reduce the freedom of heavy vehicles. This did not create an impenetrable wall. It created uncertainty, and uncertainty is one of the great enemies of armored tempo. Once Pakistani tanks had to slow, bunch, probe, and turn, they became targets rather than instruments of decision.
Arracourt also matters because it demonstrates defensive combined arms at a high level of practical effectiveness. Infantry held the local ground that tanks could not safely ignore. Engineers shaped the approaches before and during the fight. Artillery punished concentrations, disrupted supporting infantry, and made pauses dangerous. Indian tanks, including Shermans and Centurions, fought from positions where the attacker's movement had already been compromised. Anti-tank weapons, including those used with great courage by Abdul Hamid and others, struck at vulnerable moments. None of these arms alone explains the result. Their power lay in overlap. A mine slowed a tank. A village fixed its route. Artillery broke its support. And a waiting gun or tank delivered the blow.
That lesson is central to the whole history of armored warfare. Since Cambrai in 1917, tanks had promised to restore movement to battlefields where firepower had made movement costly. Over the following decades, armies learned to mass armor, communicate by radio, exploit breakthroughs, and use mechanized formations to move faster than an enemy could react. But every improvement in the tank created a corresponding demand for better coordination. The more ambitious the armored thrust, the more it depended on a whole system functioning under stress. Assault-Uttar showed that post-war armor had become powerful but not independent. The tank had evolved, yet it still needed ground, supply, infantry, artillery, engineers, maintenance, recovery, and command tempo. The battle is also important because it challenges hardware-centered memory. It is tempting to describe Assault-Uttar as Pattons against Centurions, or as modern tanks humbled by older machines. There is some truth in the contrast, but not enough. The Patton was not a useless tank, and Indian crews did not win because enemy equipment was secretly worthless. Nor did Indian older tanks become superior by legend. What mattered was how each vehicle entered the battle. A Patton advancing into soft ground under uncertain observation was not the same weapon as a Patton maneuvering freely in open country. A Sherman or Centurion waiting in a prepared defensive system was not the same weapon as one caught moving in the open. Assault-Uttar also reveals the power of command decisions that may look undramatic at the time. The decision to withdraw toward Assault-Uttar was less spectacular than a charge and less visible than a burning tank, but it was essential to the victory. The decision to build depth rather than defend a brittle forward line mattered. The decision to integrate armored reserves into prepared positions mattered. The decision to use water, mines, and villages as part of one defensive system mattered. Armored warfare often celebrates speed, but this battle reminds us that patience can be operationally aggressive. India won not by racing Pakistan's armor across Punjab, but by making Pakistan's armor race into a place where speed no longer worked. The battle's importance also lies in what it prevented. Had the Pakistani thrust broken through quickly and reached the Bias approaches, India might have faced a severe crisis in Punjab. That does not mean the war would automatically have been decided, because deep armored thrusts still need fuel, infantry, supply, air cover, bridge control, and secure flanks. But it would have forced hard decisions under pressure and could have shifted the political and military atmosphere of the war. By stopping the offensive before it reached that depth, Assault-Uttar preserved India's operational balance in the sector. It denied Pakistan the chance to convert armored confidence into strategic leverage. A road that seemed dangerous on the map never became open in reality. The human meaning of the battle should remain as clear as the operational one. Assault-Uttar was not merely a demonstration of doctrine. It was fought by men in tanks, trenches, villages, gun positions, recovery vehicles, medical posts, and supply columns. Crews died inside machines that later became symbols. Infantrymen held ground under artillery fire and the approach of heavy armor. Engineers worked in urgency to lay obstacles that might save the line. Civilians saw fields, roads, and homes turned into contested ground. The phrase Patton graveyard can be memorable, but it should not make destruction feel clean or theatrical. Every wreck carried the cost of human decision, human fear, and human loss.
The myths that grew around Assault-Uttar are understandable
Because the battle produced powerful images and real heroism. Abdul Hamid's courage deserves remembrance. The performance of Indian armored units and infantry deserves serious recognition. The sight of destroyed patents gave India a symbol of resilience and recovery after a difficult period in its military history. Yet the battle is most valuable when myth leads back to analysis rather than replacing it. Asal-Uttar was not won by one man alone, one tank type alone, or one clever trick alone. It was won because many actions, some famous and some nearly invisible, came together at the right place. The truth is more impressive than a simplified legend.
In the wider arc, from early tank warfare to late 20th century mechanized operations, Asal-Uttar stands as a classic example of armor defeated by the loss of conditions, not by the disappearance of its relevance. Tanks remained vital after 1965, and later wars would show armored forces achieving dramatic results when supported by reconnaissance, air power, logistics, training, and command systems that preserved tempo. But Asal-Uttar warned that a tank force, however modern it appears, can be trapped if it advances into terrain it does not understand, against a defender who uses time intelligently. The battle sits between older lessons and later ones. It looks back to the first failures of breakthrough exploitation and forward to modern combined arms doctrine, where information, mobility, and synchronization matter as much as armor. Asal-Uttar matters because it turned a dangerous Pakistani offensive into one of the clearest defensive reversals of the 1965 war. It showed that a seemingly stronger armored thrust could be broken by preparation, terrain, discipline, and adaptation. It showed that retreat can become method, that fields can become weapons, that older tanks can matter when used well, and that infantry, engineers, artillery, and logistics are not supporting details, but the structure of armored battle itself. It also showed that battlefield victory lives on in memory, sometimes as legend, sometimes as argument, and sometimes as a lesson still worth teaching. The final meaning of Asal-Uttar is not that tanks failed. It is that tanks, like armies, fail when their plans outrun the ground, the clock, and the combined arms system needed to carry them forward.
You've been listening to Famous Tank Battles. These battles were never just about machines. They were about doctrine, terrain, firepower, logistics, and the hard problem of turning shock into victory. For more military history writing and books, visit militaryauthor.me. And for magazines, podcasts, and a massive archive of military photos and video, visit trackpads.com. Thanks for listening.